Welcome back to Capitol Square. There certainly seemed to be momentum for the Kasich campaign following the first debate. There was that Quinnipiac poll last week that had Kasich 17 points ahead of Ted Strickland. Kasich received the first ever endorsement from the Ohio Chamber of Commerce. Writers were beginning to suggest that national Democratic organizations would soon write Ohio off. But hold on, new poll numbers could make everyone rethink what's happening. To discuss today's Ohio newspaper poll, our poll expert, Darrel Rowland, public affairs reporter for the Columbus Dispatch. Also joining us, Bill Hershey from the Dayton Daily News and Bill Cohen from Ohio Public Radio and Television. Gentlemen, good to see all of you.
Thanks, Jim.
Darrel, let's start with the news of the day and put up a couple sets of numbers here. This first one in the governor's race, and I don't know that anybody saw this one coming, but Kasich maintains a lead, but it is not 17 points. It's almost within the margin of error there, 45%. This is definitely going to be a headline, and is the headline across the state of Ohio today. And just real quickly, let's look at the Senate race here so that we can compare and let everybody know that that margin in the Senate race between Portman and Fisher remains large, where it's been pretty much all year, 55-40. Darrel, back to the governor's race, 49-45. Surprise?
I am surprised. Now, let's throw a caveat right out at the beginning, Jim, because this is the first poll of this nature in this campaign. So we're looking back at some older polls that showed Kasich up by 12, by 15 points. Those were different polls, different methodologies and everything. Still, it's got to be good news to Strickland to just have a 4-point margin, almost, as you say, within the margin of error. At the same time, that Senate race, again, which was large in those earlier polls, remains really large in favor of Rob Portman. Which leads to an indication of this is perhaps a solid poll here, because it still shows that big differential in the Senate race. Yeah, it would seem to be, and it's what we call in the polling field, it's internally consistent. He is showing a field that is actually advantaged a little bit by Republicans. Yet Strickland is doing a lot better in the previous polls, which also were, you know, Republicans' advantage.
A couple of things have happened since that Quinnipiac poll. There was the first debate between these two candidates. No major gaffes that we found. Both candidates did well, but the governor hammered home that Wall Street message, and that may be the first time that many Ohioans are actually paying attention to that and heard that. Secondly, we've seen new television ads in the governor's campaign. He's in the ads talking to Ohioans. His latest spot, Angry, which started Thursday, he ends it by stating, "I don't work for those Wall Street guys, but I work for you." This all plays off what is even acknowledged by most Republicans, that Ted Strickland is personally popular, and maybe at least the base is coming home.
That could well be, Jim. You're right. You know, a lot of us, frankly, covering the campaign, you know, we're just journalists, we're not campaign managers, but we wondered, where were the positive ads? Traditionally, you don't go negative, and Ted Strickland went negative, I think, the day after the primary. It's pretty much kept it up. Now, this is the Ted Strickland that a lot of Ohioans know and frankly, do like.
We shouldn't, you know, put the governor back in for 4 more years yet, though, because one of the interesting things in the poll, among the Kasich supporters, a greater number of them were certain to vote for Kasich. More of the Strickland people said they might change their mind. This is one of the sort of inner parts of the poll, Darrel, but this isn't insignificant. I mean, this is harder support for Kasich than there is for Strickland. But another thing, this is the Ohio newspapers poll. The same poll, done the same way by the same people in January, showed Kasich with a 6-point lead. So this indicates things really haven't changed too much in terms of the Strickland-Kasich gap as measured by this methodology. And that's got to be good news for Governor Strickland.
Now, an earlier dispatch poll showed that Strickland was having a bad time getting the union vote, splitting it virtually with Kasich, which would really be bad news for a Democrat. They should be getting 60, 70, 80% of the union vote. But perhaps, as you point out, maybe the base is coming home. I know the unions put out, ramped up a special effort to get their union folks back in line, back to their traditional home, the Democrats. There's another thing in this poll, this new one, showing, even though earlier polls showed independents going for Kasich, now maybe more of an even split. So that's more good news for
Do Republicans, Darrel, come back at this poll and say, look, it's not weighted properly because there's an enthusiasm gap and we expect more Republicans to vote in the state of Ohio this year? In other words, is it still split 45-45?
As far as the enthusiasm,
the percentage, 45-40 in the poll between parties, is it still split evenly?
Well, it's Republicans by plus 2 or 3%.
Oh, is it?
So
okay.
This is a Republican playing field. Those of us who polled Ohio a long time, this is kind of the 90s, early 2000s playing field. Starting in the mid-2000s, 2005, 2006, Democrats greatly outnumbered Republicans. And in terms of voter registration, they still do in this state by like 1 million people. So that will be Democrats' game as early voting starts here on Tuesday, is to turn out what they still believe is a registration advantage. As far as criticizing the methodology, sure, the people who don't like the results are often critical for some strange reason.
One of the things that you pointed out at the beginning of the show was Governor Strickland's new ad, Angry, the Chamber of Commerce endorsement for Kasich. We're getting about as close as we can get in the 21st century to class warfare. AFL-CIO is going all out for Governor Strickland now. They've got a Gordon Gekko look-alike contest. The Chamber of Commerce has endorsed John Kasich. Governor Strickland is angry. He's the man of the working man's friend. Kasich is the businessman friend. This is it's really interesting to look at. I don't like to say fun, but you can see the differences between the two camps here, and there are clear choices for voters.
And if this was kind of political science 101, I think we'd still have to say Kasich has the edge in terms of the political climate.
Sure does.
Because we still have this, in general, we don't know how big it's going to be, but a Republican wave, momentum for Republicans compared to 2 and 4 years ago. Plus you've got the corruption scandal up in Cleveland, which you'd think, in a textbook way, should be depressing the Democrats' voter turnout.
All right, we have to take a quick break. Welcome back to Capitol Square. This is the headline of today. All across the state of Ohio, talk about this in the political world. 49, 45%, polls tightening. And Darrell, let's talk briefly. What is the Ohio newspaper poll?
It's the Ohio newspaper organization. It's the 8 largest newspapers in Ohio, the Dispatch, a Plain Deal, or the Beacon Journal from Akron, and the rest of the large ones in Ohio.
Don't forget the Dayton Daily News.
And the Dayton Daily News. Excuse me. I thought you were going to do that one.
For those that point to, a lot of folks might be thinking when they see this, well, just a week ago, we're all reporting that 17-point edge. What does it tell us specifically, and what does this poll do differently, if anything, than Quinnipiac?
Actually, they're very similar, and that's what's a little mystifying. They're both telephone polls. This was conducted for the newspapers by the University of Cincinnati, the same folks that do the Ohio poll, using the same methodology as Bill of the Dayton Daily News mentioned earlier. But this happens. There's a little bit difference in the screening questions, determining who's going to be a likely voter.
And these are likely voters.
These are likely voters. Now, each poll determines that a little bit differently, so that's why you're going to see a lot of results bounce around. And that will be the key as we hone in toward Election Day to see which poll is most accurate.
And again, Bill, first poll post-debate, and these new ads that Strickland's running.
Yeah, I think that, you know, the campaign doesn't stand still, and every poll is just a snapshot of the time period in which it was taken. There could be a poll going on right now that'll be released in 3 or 4 days with different results. As the politicians say, the only one that really counts is on November 2nd, but we don't want to wait until November 2nd to see what looks like is happening anyway.
How's the governor doing in Cleveland?
Well, that's interesting. It's a dead heat in Northeast Ohio, 47 to 47%, and this is a Democratic stronghold, but it's troubled. But in Columbus, which usually is Republican or Republican leaning, it's almost a dead heat too. And in Southeast Ohio, the governor's home, he's I think 9 or 10 points ahead. It's a smaller region of the state, but the geopolitics of Ohio are sort of turned sideways and upside down with having a governor from Duck Run.
Maybe as important or more important than whether or not this poll is particularly accurate or not is the psychological boost it gives to the Democrats. I think, you know, when that 17-point thing came out with Quinnipiac, a lot of Democrats saying, well, why should I even vote? But now you get a poll like this, and I think this is going to energize Democrats and get them going door to door and get them rallying and get their turnout hiked.
And it certainly keeps the money here in Ohio, at least from the National Democratic Party, into the governor's race.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you know, to Bill's point, the other side of that coin is I think the Republicans, in some cases, were getting a little bit complacent. They were, you know, putting the champagne on ice and everything. My colleague Joe Howell was told by the Republican chairman that he was already getting congratulatory calls from around the state, which scares the snot out of him.
I have a feeling he won't starting now.
Right.
Bill Cohen, Bill Hershey, and Darrel Rowland, thank you very much. I also want to thank Karen Kassler for joining us in our first segment, and Supreme Court Justice Judith Lanziger for being our guest. By the way, Capitol Square has covered extensively Campaign 2010 all year. We've brought you the candidates, the strategists, the polls, and the experts. Next week, we're very proud to announce that we're teaming up with WBNS in Central Ohio. Anchor Jerry Revish will join me for a month-long in-depth look at the candidates and where they stand on critical issues facing the state of Ohio. The candidates will speak, and then our outstanding panel of political experts will break down the key points of their campaign. Central Ohio viewers can watch Capitol Square each weekend before Election Day on WBNS 10 TV Saturday evenings. And we'll stay right here, of course, on ONN statewide, Sundays at 10, noon, and 7 p.m. If it is Ohio politics, say it with me, it is Capitol Square. I'd like to hear from you. Twitter, Facebook, or send us an email. Take care, everybody.